We are so excited. We're going to start our first video notes on ancient China. I know a lot of you have been asking us about this unit and when we're going to do it. So we're so excited to dive right in. You guys did a great job on ancient India, so we can't wait to see what you do with China. Now, we're going to be in lesson 1 this time. We only have 2 lessons this chapter. It's one of our shorter ones. And we're going to look today at the birth of Chinese influence. And start off with our geography like we always do. And one of the reasons that it matters is that today China is one of the world's most powerful countries. And so it's very important that we have an understanding of how it was shaped and some of the geographic features and kind of just the general history of it. Well, we look forward to diving right in, guys, so we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Before we get started, we wanted to make just a little bit of a disclaimer. Just like we talked about in India, there are a lot of words that are not in our first language. So the 4 of us work really hard to try to get our pronunciation right, but we're not always perfect at it. And sometimes we have to go back to our sources to make sure that we're getting it accurately. And so sometimes, when we make mistakes, we just got to have fun with it and roll with the punches. But we never mean to be disrespectful. It is important to try our best to get our information accurate and to be respectful when trying to tackle another language, because this is the language that somebody speaks, and we wouldn't want somebody to take our own language lightly either. So as we move forward, we're going to try our best to give you the correct pronunciations, and we're going to continue researching the best way that we can be respectful of these names and places and make sure we give you as much accurate information as we can. But just keep in mind, guys, we love you, we love what we're teaching, and we would never want to be disrespectful to another culture. So if we make mistakes, just know it's not done out of carelessness or disrespect. We're just figuring it out the best we can as we go along. So with that being said, none of us are perfect. We hope you guys enjoy kind of laughing at us so we kind of muddle through some of this a little bit, and we'll do our best to get as accurate as possible as our unit goes on. All right, let's go.
All right, guys, so all of the ancient civilizations we've learned about so far, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India, they all have one major geographical thing in common, and that's they developed along large rivers. Come on now, we know this. So China also developed along large rivers known as the Wanghe and the Changjiang. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Just like all the rivers we've talked about this year, the Wanghe often caused enormous floods. Now, since 600 BC, there have been more than 1,500 floods recorded, and it's taken millions of lives. So the Chinese often refer to the Wanghe as China's sorrow to honor the people that have been lost during those violent floods. Now, southern China actually receives more rainfall during the year than northern China, which allows farmers to grow several crops of rice per year. So over time, people moved south and settled along the Changjiang, which we also call the Yangtze. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Got to ask Miss Todrick on the pronunciation because Miss Lewis doesn't know. Okay, so both of these rivers were eventually connected by a canal that helped them with trade and transportation. Although China has fertile land along these rivers, the mountains and deserts cover most of the country. Now, western China's high mountains and wide deserts make travel very difficult, which isolates them from people in the east. The Himalayan mountains, which we know are down here, separate China from South Asia, and the Gobi Desert, which would be found around here, keeps China isolated from northern Asia. These mountains and deserts were natural barriers. Remember, that's something we've talked about all year, natural barriers. These natural barriers kept China isolated from other civilizations for many centuries.
Okay, guys, now we're on to our fun fact. The silt in the Huanghe River. Wanghe. Hey. Gave it a yellow color, which is why we call it the Yellow River. So now what you need to do with your map is follow the directions, color the populated area green, color the desert area yellow, and color the mountainous area orange.
So think about what I just talked about. If there's desert up here and there's mountains over here, do you think people are living there?
No.
Now for your hot question. What impact did the geography of China have on communication and trade with other civilizations? Look at all of your stop signs.
Ooh. Nope. We're going to make that red.
I don't know how to work the technology.
It's okay. That's what we're here for. Write it. You know we're checking.
Yes, 20 points off if you don't.
Ooh. Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh. Miss Tickle's not here to play.
Ooh. Bye.
All right, so we've looked at geography now. We've looked at how that China is insulated from the rest of the world. They're isolated, and and they had all the geography that kept them separate from the rest of the world. So what developed inside China then? How did the people govern themselves? What did they do? And what was most important to them? And so I get the privilege of talking to you today about the first Chinese dynasty, and it's going to be the Shang Dynasty. Now, the Shang Dynasty is going to come around about 1600 BC, and we can see their empire right here on the map. We can see the dark area where the area that they ruled, and they are going to first develop along a river valley. Imagine that, another river valley civilization. And river valleys are very important because in the valleys is where all of the good fertile soil is going to be, and they're going to be able to have enough food to feed whatever population they may have. So the Shang Dynasty is going to be aware of that, and they're going to develop right there along the Huanghe River. And they're going to be ruled by a king. And each king is going to set up smaller provinces around that are going to be ruled by, we're going to talk about that in just a second, we'll get to that one, by warlords. That was next. And each little section is going to be ruled or governed by a warlord for the king. So the Shang Dynasty has these local territories that are divided into smaller sections, and we've seen that a lot. And any good ruler is going to find a way to organize his territory to have good communication between his territory and himself, between the rulers that he set out in the territories and himself. So there's going to be development of roads, there's going to be development of a communication system back and forth, which is going to require writing, and we'll talk about these the writing of the Chinese later and all the characters that they have for their writing system. And it's going to be well organized. Most people in the Shang Dynasty are going to be farmers, as is true of most of the ancient world, because we have a big need to have enough food for everybody to eat. And they're going to be polytheistic. They're going to worship many gods. And one of the things that the Shang Dynasty introduces and that their priests do is something called reading oracle bones. And we're going to watch that in a video, and Mr. Nicky has a great video about China. When we get finished with the video, if you want to go check that out, go ahead and see it. They're going to talk about those oracle bones. Oracle bones are bones of animals that are going to be burned, and then they're going to burn them long enough until they start to crack and they have little lines on them. And then they're going to read the lines on these oracle bones in order to predict the future and know what's going to happen. So they could ask a question, then read the bones and see what the answer was going to be, whether it was going to be positive or negative. And that was the god's answer. And so reading oracle bones was something that the priest would do, and it became, well, let's find out and see what we should do based on these oracle bones. So it's really an interesting civilization that we're going to learn about. They're going to honor their ancestors, and they're going to seek guidance from them in the past. So the Shang Dynasty is not the beginning of the mandate of heaven. Now, you're going to hear about that in just a second, but it makes perfect sense when Miss Todrick tells you what's coming next. Think about it from the conqueror's point of view. The Shang are going to be defeated by the Zhou Dynasty. The Zhou Dynasty. Zhou Dynasty. And when they get defeated by this other dynasty, they come up with this amazing, the new dynasty comes up with an amazing reason why they were able to defeat the Shang. Because the Shang were pretty good. They had a lot of interesting achievements and things that we're going to talk about, and they were a pretty solid dynasty, but yet they were able to be overthrown by another dynasty that Ms. Todrick's going to talk to you about. And your enemies are always watching. So when you become powerful and good and strong, and you have something worth taking or something worth copying, they're watching. And so you want to be aware as a leader, wherever you may be, that you need to just be aware of who's around you, who's watching you, and what's going on, because your enemies are always watching. So something's going to happen to the Shang to make them weak and allow another dynasty to come in and take over. So this is where we're getting to some really cool things about history, and we're getting into interesting stories. And the Chinese are interesting. So I'm looking forward to telling you some of the great stories that I know, and I hope to see you soon. So good luck with Miss Todrick in the next dynasty. See ya. So Ms. Hodges just got finished talking to us about the Shang Dynasty, the first dynasty in ancient China. We're also today going to look at the Zhou Dynasty. And I know that it's spelled with a Z, and I know, kind of like Miss Lewis was saying, sometimes the pronunciations in China can throw us off. But this one I always remember, Zhou. It kind of sounds like a French guy trying to say the name Joe. And so, maybe write that in, like Joe, J-O-E, right above the Zhou. So we should, when we check your notes, see you writing that little pronunciation guide in for yourself. But this was China's longest lasting dynasty and its largest. So according to legend, the last of the Shang rulers was this crazy tyrant, this very evil king. And in 1045 BC, rebels led by an aristocrat, or remember that's somebody from a wealthy family, named Wu Wang, overthrew the government and started a new dynasty that they called the Zhou Dynasty. And this dynasty lasted for more than 800 years. This is crazy. Guys, that's more than twice as long as the United States has even been a country, okay? In fact, it's almost 4 times as long as the United States has been a country. So we're talking a crazy long amount of time. So why did this dynasty last so long? First and foremost, it had a really well-organized government. We call this a bureaucracy. And this is a system of government officials who carry out various tasks. So you don't just have a monarch doing all the work. He kind of assigns it to other people, and it's really incredibly well organized. So above this word bureaucracy, I want you to write down well organized. So when we check, again, right about here, we should see the words well organized. My handwriting is too big to do this. Okay, well organized. There we go. Forgive my crazy, messy handwriting here. Okay? And because of that, it helps to create stable leadership. Even if the king or whoever was in charge at one given time were to die, enough people had control over the government to make sure that the dynasty is stable. We also had an idea called the mandate of heaven. Guys, this is super important. I want you to put a star around this, circle this, maybe, draw some arrows here. We should see that that this concept is crazy important, and we're going to talk more about it in our next video notes. But the most important thing to know about this is the idea that in a mandate of heaven, a king's right to rule comes from the gods, okay? We've seen this idea before in Mesopotamia and Egypt as well. Because of this, a king has some responsibilities. Of course, the people have to honor him, but a king must also honor and please the gods. And if he failed, he would be replaced. So most kings worked really hard to make sure they were doing what they considered to be the right thing. Now, in our next video notes, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of this cycle of if a king did not honor and please the gods, what would happen, okay? But for now, please, please, please make sure you have this mandate of heaven idea circled, starred, highlighted, I don't know. Make sure you have that pointed out, okay? So stay tuned, though, because even though this is our last graphic organizer, we have a really important announcement for you at the end of this video. All right, see you in just a second. All right, hi guys. We wanted to take a moment just to explain to you some things that we've seen and some things that we've learned lately. And as your teachers, we try to keep on top of things and try to learn new stuff ourselves. And we came across an article that we thought that we would share a little bit with you from the article over the next couple of slides. So we're going to share some things. Social media is a big deal for you guys, and it's something that you want to use, and we want you to be good at it. But then we also want you to be safe, and we want you to use it appropriately, and we want you to use it safely. So we're going to start just looking at some things that you should never do on social media. And so the first one we want to start with, yes, things you should never do on social media. And we want to start with number 3.
And number 3 is you should not trash your teachers. So what that means is you need to treat everyone exactly the way you wish that you were treated. If you wouldn't want somebody to say things about you, then you shouldn't say things about someone else and put them online. And so we talk to you a lot about treating each other with kindness and that kind of thing, but we've noticed that sometimes students don't realize that maybe you should treat everyone with kindness no matter who they are. Even if it's your teacher, your parents, your sisters, your brothers, cousins, everyone that you come in contact should be treated with kindness. So especially on social media, because social media is a place where it's going to get copied and somebody's going to use your words against you. So make sure the words you're putting out are kind and words that you'd be proud of somebody copied, not words that you'd be embarrassed if somebody copied the things you say. So we want to be proud of you. We want to be proud of you every day in your schoolwork, in your morality, and the things you choose to do. And we want to just be able to say we are so proud of our Pacetti Bay students. They're the best in the world. So you guys continue to do what you do. Let us see you shine. Let us see your good side, and then everything else will take care of itself. We love you and have a great day.
One more thing about that, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of social media out there that you think it'll go away right after a couple seconds.
True.
But you don't know who's going to be screenshotting that. You don't know who's going to be copying that and sending it forwards. Never put anything on social media you would be ashamed for your mama to see, for your teachers to see, for anybody to see. Because even if you think it's going to disappear, it's not. And it gets back to the people. More often than not, when you start talking negative about people, it gets back to them. Okay? And like Miss Hodges said, when in doubt, if you wouldn't like somebody speaking that way about you, don't do it yourself.
No, be kind. Be kind. Show us your good side.
All right?
All right. Love you.
Love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.